Okay, looks like we are live. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, I'm Darian.
Julio.
It feels like we're out of practice already. It's just been the weekend. And today is Topic Tackle Tuesday for DNC. Today we're talking about rebranding. A lot of you chimed in yesterday with the post that we dropped, asking if you've rebranded and why you've rebranded. And we've rebranded one big time. The rest I would consider several pivots. And so we want to address your comments and we want to talk about why we've rebranded and hopefully answer any and all questions you have about that.
There you go.
It's a big week.
Yeah. So to start it off, let's break down the idea or concept of rebranding. Now, rebranding in and of itself is not a bad thing. You know, there's something to be said about if it's not work, fix it, right? As Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank always famously says, sometimes you just gotta take it out from behind the barn and shoot it, right? So it's sort of the same concept. If it's not working, if it's not making you happy, it's maybe not worth the stress and anxiety that this is just gonna kind of create. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about why you're gonna want to rebrand. A couple different points. Brand has evolved. For example, with us, it went from DNC. Well, technically, it went from Wild Texas. What?
That's addressed later. But yeah.
Okay.
I had notes.
So yeah, the point of it is that the brand has evolved. And for example, as far as an evolution is concerned, it went from DNC Copywriting to DNC Marketing.
Right.
So there's that. Second one, time for a pivot. So for example, it may be still in the same general industry or idea. So for example, you may think, well, actually, I think ours is, the idea of an evolution is still a pivot. Yeah. So even using ours again from DNC Copywriting to DNC Marketing was a pivotal move, right? It was one thing that copy is so involved in everything that we do that we basically said, okay, so we got the copywriting part of it down. How can we enhance the user's experience and say like, hey, listen, because here's the problem. We went through so many copywriting like schools and Darian's gotten many certifications, but the best copy in the world can only do so much if your website sucks. Yeah. And if your load time sucks and if the way you place that copy sucks. You know, so that was basically what really made us go into DNC marketing as opposed to just saying with DNC copywriting. Mm-hmm. You know, we decided, hey, we should help everybody with all aspects, right? Because what we don't want is to do all this work and you pay us, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars to do all this, and then we hand it to you and then it won't work. But not because the words aren't there, but because everything else about the website, whether it's the homepage, about page, your product descriptions, your lack of an actual email series, things like that aren't up to par.
Right, and we saw this with a lot of clients, which is why we decided we're really doing people a disservice by only offering copywriting, by not making it very clear that yes, here are your words, and these words are going to help you, but they're just one piece. You actually need the full funnel in order for this to actually work for you. So when clients would come to us say like, well, I paid you this money and I'm not getting results, and our response is, you have all these things broken, but it wasn't some of the services we offered, that felt wrong. Yeah. So our pivot was really, it was inspired by lots of our clients and things who needed that help, who we were like, look, why are we holding back right now? Yeah. So that's one form of pivot or rebranding. I think rebranding really is, pivot is the actions that you're taking, the decision that you make to change.
Hi, Candace.
Hey. And then rebranding is what everyone sees.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So that's the difference there, I think.
And then finally, as far as why to rebrand, your brand just no longer feels right. And again, there's two different ways you can think about that. You can think about it from a emotional standpoint, which is your brand doesn't feel right to you, and it doesn't make you happy anymore. It's not what you intended it to be. Or you can think of it from more of a financial or logical standpoint, in which case it may just be like, this is just no longer feasible for me to do. I've outgrown this. Mm-hmm. And then that's when you start to talk about the above things, which was evolution and pivoting. Mm-hmm. So from there, let's go into things that stop people from rebranding.
This one's really interesting because we've also run into this a lot, especially with coaching calls. And part of this is a mindset thing. So we've heard people say, like, I've spent a whole bunch of money on this brand new website that I had finished. I've got all this merchandise left over. Like, I really need to sell all of those things before I can pivot. I'm really attached to my current brand, or I've had this logo for 20 years. Like, I can't change it now because my current customers, they're going to run from me if I change my logo.
Yeah.
So
an interesting point about that is it's the same sort of idea of, I don't know if you've seen this show or not, but it's a pretty famous show. Hawaii's Good.
Thank you, CK.
Hi, CK.
She wants us to share our studio lighting setup. We can totally do a whole studio equipment thing.
Sure.
But another time.
But yeah, so basically the long and short of it is, have you ever seen the show Hell's Kitchen, right? Like no. Kitchen Nightmares. That's what it is, with Gordon Ramsay.
Right. So who watches that? Shout out in the comments if you watch that. We love Gordon Ramsay.
So basically, if you watch the show, you're probably watching him go around people's kitchens and saying, wow, this sucks and this is gross and blah, blah, blah. And then in almost every episode, the people are always saying, well, I can't change because we still have 5 people that actually come to the shop. And what happens if we change and we lose them? So their desperation to hold on to at least something is stopping them from changing everything and possibly growing. Because there is part of that is like gambling. It is a little bit of a bet, right? You got to bet on yourself. Now, as you watch this show, you might actually look at it and be like, oh man, these people are so stupid. Why are they doing this? Well, here's the thing. When it's yours, you're looking at it as an outsider perspective.
Right.
When it's yours, a lot of people make the exact same mistake. Right? They look at their business and they go, like Darren was mentioning, I have too much inventory, I have too much time, I have too much money invested into this, I'm going to stay. But the problem is that if it's not making you happy, if it's not making you money, why are you going to stay? And if it is making you money, but you're miserable doing it, why are you going to stay?
Right, exactly.
So, there's still a pro and con to that, and it's about pulling yourself away and giving yourself that kind of outside perspective look and being like, hey, this is something I think I do need to change. And then trying to find coaches, mentors, friends, family that you can bounce ideas off of
a community
to figure out how you can change and not just change so drastically that everything is, you're basically just starting completely re-over.
Yeah.
Right? The best case scenario, you want to go into something that is different, that's fresh, that helps you in whatever reason you wanted to rebrand anyways, but it's still in the general genre of what you're doing in order to utilize everything you've already spent that time, money, and inventory on.
And that's the easiest way to do it. We've seen people who, we did, like you were going to say at the very beginning, we went to a completely new industry. And even, hi, great info. Thank you, Candace. Even when we moved from our soap and candle business to DNC copywriting, and then from DNC copywriting to DNC marketing, there were a lot of points where I was just like, no, I'm going to dig my heels in and I'm going to force this to work. But Julio, always like the objective thinker, the one who's got the big vision of it, he would always come to me and he would say like, okay, yeah, we've spent this money. Yeah, we've spent this time. And I'm sure you've heard us say before, like we've put a lot of time and money into creating copy and designs and all kinds of different things that we end up not using because we pivot sometimes so quickly.
Yeah.
The reason for it is because a better idea is worth the cost you've already put in.
Right.
A better business is worth that time that you feel is wasted because you've learned something from that. And by sticking with it just because you've invested that time, that money, that energy, you're actually going to be costing yourself money. You're going to be costing the business money potentially when you could pivot to something much more successful that makes you much more happy.
Exactly. And then you want to start this one off?
Sure. How to rebrand. So we get these questions sometimes, and I know like a couple of you that I see here are actually in the process of rebranding, or you've asked us a question about rebranding before. And when you rebrand, the big 3 things, and we really want to address this in more depth on the Friday Live because we've got a whole bunch of points for that. But the big 3 things that I wanted to get across today, because I anticipate having some questions and a conversation about it, is one, to get clear on your product and your message. So when you go to pivot, are you pivoting completely like Julio said, or like Julio said, are you in the same sort of industry? Are you going from like scarves to more of a general clothing line? Are you going from, just soap to more of a broad category there?
Right.
Or are you completely switching niches from like soap and candles to marketing?
Yeah.
So first thing there is get clear on what you want to offer. And then you want to get clear on the actual message that you're going to deliver there. So what is the point? Why are you offering this? And this might have to do with the reason that you're pivoting. If it's not something financial, if it's something that emotionally weighs on you. I've coached several jewelry designers specifically who have redone their entire jewelry brand because the message wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
And jewelry being a very emotional buy for customers is very important. A lot of products are an emotional buy, but it's very important in that industry to get that message right because it's so saturated and because there are so many offers out there. If the message isn't right, you just kind of blend into the beige of the background, right? Yeah. So for one, a lot of people ran into I no longer feel like this is authentically me. Like I've outgrown it, I've evolved,
right.
Or something has changed in my life that now makes me feel like I need to change my brand.
Yeah.
And that's going to resonate with your customers. So getting a clear understanding on that and how you feel about that is going to be really important. What was the next thing, Julio? You go ahead and do that one.
So the next part of that is getting clear on who you will serve. So the importance of this, excuse me, this is about competition research. Now, in a perfect world, you should start off, this is my personal opinion on how your business should evolve, especially if you're starting over, right? You should do what I like to call, you know what? I totally went blank. What's the first thing I call it?
Competition. Oh, PDA?
No, but the first, it's not competition. It's when you look up to somebody. Come on.
Admiration?
No, it's not it.
I don't know. I forget.
Okay. Anyways. I've said it so many times and I completely
so
lost it.
I know what you're trying to say though, like your ideal target, who you want to be, the model.
Yes, basically. Yeah. So initially you just want to, for example, if we were redoing the soaps and candle business, right? The best way to do that would be to say, okay, who do we model that after? So as an example, if we wanted to use the company, like a company that Darian really likes is a company called Lush. And they do, they do soaps and bath bombs and all sorts of other stuff, right? It's all natural, blah, 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 blah. So you would take the ideal, business that you would be running and you take that and say, okay, what are they doing? What makes them different? You kind of go into like a brand deep dive. You'd learn everything you possibly can about them and how they hire and their CEO and what their stuff's made out of and why they decided to do this and, was any of the packaging different 5 years ago? Mm-hmm. And, you would try to just figure things out, piece everything together, exactly, the messaging as well. And then from there, you start the competition research. That's where you say, okay, so this is the person I want to be. Okay, so who's their competition, mm-hmm. right? And then you start looking at that. You start, by doing that, you allow yourself to say, okay, the people who aren't going to Lush are going to this company, this company, this company. Do they share any similarities? And if they do, what are they? Now, if they don't, what are the differences? And which one's more successful? Mm-hmm. And just because it's more successful doesn't mean that you want to go that route, yeah. Right? For example, let's just make an assumption here that, let's say that Bed Bath & Beyond, or no, Bath & Body Works, that one, is Lush's biggest competitor, right? They're completely different, let's just say. So you have to decide, do you want to be Lush or do you want to be Bed Bath & Beyond or Bath Body Works? That's what I'm saying.
That one. Because their target markets are different.
Right.
Right? Very different. And that's the point of competition research also is...
Right. They're in the same niche, but different people.
Very different people. And this is partly where the DNC Marketing Personality Sales System came from, is us noticing a pattern and a difference in the kind of people who shop in different places and what their characteristics were.
Exactly.
So when you do that competition research, when you see like, I've got Lush, I've got Bath & Body Works. Now you got me confused. Two different people, right? Bath & Body Works. That's the saver mom. That's the person who's like, I'm already at the mall, I'm gonna pop in, I'm gonna get the latest sale, or oh, it's pumpkin spice time, like right. I see that everywhere, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna grab that.
Because it's like Lush, 10 items for $30.
Right, very budget friendly. But Lush is very much like, we're going to charge a little bit more, but it's because like charity and all natural and raw and handmade. And if you look at like commercials for both of them, very different target markets.
Sure.
They're speaking to very different people. So right. Analyzing that, understanding that, and then taking that and saying like, okay, I want to model after Lush. So I want to start targeting the same kind of people they are targeting. Let me analyze those kind of people. Let me analyze what Lush is doing to talk to them, the kind of copy that they're using, the kind of ads that they put out, what they give their customers as an experience, like in-store and online models.
Sure. Now, keep in mind, of course, that that's a company, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to do it as a individual, this is where like the 5-week test that we talked about last week kind of comes into play, because you are still trying to, even though you're modeling after somebody else, you're still trying to figure out what your personal voice and brand is. Do you know? Mm-hmm. So essentially what you're trying to get at is you do the 5-week test in order to say, okay, I want to be Lush 2.0, my version of it, right? And so I'm going to have Jay's soaps or Julio soaps, whatever. You're going to have, maybe an easy way to do this, as an example, is you have your Instagram feed, and maybe you have like a poll that says, do you like this or do you like this? Now, it's the same product, it's the same handmade thing, but it might be, this one is like a bath bomb, this one's more of like a hand soap, this one's more of like a jelly type of thing, this one's more of a regular type of soap. It's a slightly different pricing, it's slightly different colors, the way you describe it in the product description might be slightly different. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the small differences that make people say, okay, so I like this. I like handmade soaps. What I'm going to do now is pick. And when you pick, they're instinctively saying, I like this. But of course, you want to make sure that you're only looking at one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. So even though there may be different products, your main focus needs to be on, today I'm going to try out the product descriptions and see what resonates better.
Right.
Today I'm going to try out this and see what resonates better. And then try it again, right? It's about testing. It's a scientific theory, basically. So you have your hypothesis, and then once you have proven your hypothesis, you need to test it again to make sure that it's actually accurate.
Right. Thorough testing. And so you can do that in posting to social media. You can do that sending out to your email list. If you go to like craft fairs, or you have a brick and mortar store, like in conversation, trying out certain kinds of wording.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Keep running on to this. I will be right back.
Okay. So along with that, with the competition research and everything, Candace just asked, how do you find your competitors for your target market? And part of that, the way I do this, for example, especially when I'm working with a client, is when I have to ask them to do this, or when they're very uncertain on how to do it, what we'll talk about is who their competitors are on social media, or who they look up to on social media. So again, if we take Lush, for example, I would follow Lush on Instagram. And then I would look through Lush's follower search, or when I follow them, I'll see who Instagram recommends to me, and I'll start writing down all of these names. Then I'll go to all of these names, follow them, and I'll do the same thing. I'll write down all the names of who Instagram recommends. Then I'll go in and I'll see who are the most engaged accounts, whether that's like with 1 million followers like Lush has, or with a couple of thousand followers. Both are incredibly important because Lush is your ideal, that's where you're working toward. So you want to keep track of what they're doing so that you're staying on trend, so that you're doing the same things that same customer base is interested in. What's really cool to watch is when a big brand does something and then you see the smaller brands doing these things, even very, very small brands, and the same customer base is obsessed with both brands. They're going to shop at Lush, and they're going to shop at the mom and pop shop around the corner that's doing similar things, because you're addressing that same need and you're following that same kind of trend set. So it's okay to be doing what those bigger brands are doing. They are doing all the legwork for you, all that research and development, all that money spent to see if this is going to resonate with the customer base. All you got to do is watch. And then you can start implementing those same things on your scale, on your capability level. So on Instagram, for example, Candace, if I'm going to make a list of those competitors, I'm going to write all of them down. I'm going to make sure I pay attention to the engagement they're getting, especially for the smaller brands, because if you see that a brand with about 1,000 followers is following Lush, but there's no engagement, that's going to be a waste of your time. They're clearly not hitting very well. But if they have like hundreds of comments, hundreds of likes, hundreds of hearts, comments most important, you can see that they're very engaged with their customer base. You can see that they're very engaged with the people who follow them. So that means pay attention to what they are doing as well. And it also gives you a chance to collaborate with somebody who is on a similar level as you, which is what we call micro-influencers. And I think we've heard other people call it that too. Where did we get that from?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real term. So the idea behind micro-influencers is just that it's people that are, maybe a little bit above you, but not necessarily somebody has 1 million followers. Mm-hmm. The point of that is so that way you can start doing collaborations with people that are typically more engaged, right? They typically are answering questions better. They're liking comments and posts. They're still trying to build up. Mm-hmm. So they are really kind of pushing themselves to work with their audience, right? The other benefit to that is if you decide to work with them, normally they'll either work for free mm-hmm. or the fees that they charge to promote your products, if assuming it's not a collaboration, of course, is minimal, right? That's like, hey, $100 or whatever, and for every day of the week to my 10,000 followers, I'm going to post, saying that I recommend your product, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. That being said, then the higher you go, the more the cost mm-hmm. For that sort of thing. So if you have somebody that's like 100,000 subscribers, they may ask for $400 or $500 for that week for the exact same posting, but because it's on a broader audience. You can effectively think of them as an equivalency of like an ad, mm-hmm. basically.
Right, and this is helpful as competition research because you're getting in with the same people. It's co-opetition at that point.
Right.
So while you're doing that research and you're able to study what your followers are enjoying and what they like and what they actually buy to help make your brand better, you're also able to get in front of larger audiences and build your audience. And if you're working with people who have a similar follower base as you, it's mutually beneficial, which is why a lot of times they won't ask for anything. They'll just want to collaborate and have both of you share with equal weight on your social channels.
Sure. I mean, and that's going to go up as you climb the list. I mean, if you just pay attention to, let's say, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember who one of the gentlemen's names is, but someone like Russell Brunson did a little webinar thing with like Tony Robbins and I can't remember who the other guy is. Anyways, not really the point. What they did, and I guarantee, I don't actually know for sure, right? But I mean, it's the same thing everybody does. They share each other's email list, mm-hmm. right?
Oh, yeah.
So because of that, they're able to now grow their email list exponentially. Now, they, of course, came up with their own answers in terms of how much are you going to pay me, what's the split of the sales, et cetera, et cetera. But in that, you'll see Tony Robbins created a couple posts. Maybe he sent out an email or two saying, check out this guy, Russell Brunson. This webinar we did, we gave such great free information. It's going to change your life. Mm-hmm. Well, now his, let's just throw for a number out, 1 million email list base is now clicking over to check out Russell Brunson, and maybe some of them already knew him, maybe some of them didn't. So now it's introducing to a different audience. Same thing with Russell Brunson doing the same thing, and then each person is gaining large amounts of people that are following them, that are now on their email list, that they're buying now their course or their software or their products. So it's again that collaborative effect of co-opetition. Right. Are they in the same kind of niche? Sure, business, etc., speaking, all that stuff. But what they're realizing is, hey, there are so many people that we can sell to. We don't need to worry about taking each other's competition, really. Right. Let's work together, and then you sell to my people, I sell to your people, because my people already bought from me. So now we're both making money cross-sectionally.
And you're keeping your audience happy that way. And if you pay attention, if you're following marketing people in your inbox and things like that, and you pay attention to the kind of emails you're getting, mm-hmm. I've noticed, for example, Josh and Jill from Screw the 9 to 5, James Wedmore and Amy Porterfield, they obviously all run in the same circle. They obviously all have consistent affiliate programs that they work together on because I'm constantly seeing them promoting each other, which is a wonderful thing. And that's exactly how that works. Yeah, they have an agreement going on for that. And you can too with people who are around the same level as you. And as you all grow, you're growing together and you're bringing in more into that group. Right. So you don't think of it as competition because they're not taking anything from you. Your customers like the variety, right? So the more you introduce to them and the more you engage with them consistently and don't drop the ball on where did this person go? They've disappeared. I'm going to move on to the next. Yeah. The better your customers are going to want to follow you, the more loyal they're going to be and the more interested they're going to be in what you're doing.
And speaking about email marketing and variety, check out tomorrow's post that I filmed a little bit earlier today about the company Peloton. It's a cycling company, indoor bikes. Basically, we did an ad reaction Wednesday, and I sort of break down the idea of email marketing and giving a diverse message. So just make sure you look out for that post. It'll be there tomorrow morning. Yep. Now, is that the general gist of the topic points?
Those are all the points I had, other than the comments and things we had.
Sure. So, Candace, you're welcome. Well, I guess you should say you're welcome.
Well, you're welcome.
CK, I guess this is just one big experiment. I'll try that. Yeah, I mean, really, that's what it is. It's all just one giant experiment, right? Like when it comes to business, you got to know your numbers, right? So it's a little different when it's online. Thus, the reason why it's one big experiment. We talk more about that in the Masterclass. We talk more about that I guess we'll probably share one of those. We're currently creating ads for the Masterclass, and one of the things about the ads we're going to cover, and actually I guess we could make this a topic on Friday maybe.
Sure.
Is PDA, right? And it's not that kind of PDA. It starts, but I'll give you a basic gist of it right now. Basically, we have P, which is personality, D, which is demographics, and then A, which is an avatar, right? So like, we're giving you, what I'm trying to do is make sure that we're condensing the information to where you can accurately understand it, right? So like last Tuesday, I think, we started talking about personality types and demographics and how we believe, psychographics should go over demographics. In other words, it should be about personality over But one thing I think that maybe we weren't clear on is that we're not trying to dismiss the idea of demographics,
right?
And we're not trying to dismiss the idea of an avatar in terms of whether or not it's useful information,
right? But there is a right way and a wrong way to understand that, and we see a lot of people taking the avatar in just the complete wrong direction.
Exactly. So we can cover that on Friday if that's cool.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Cool. Let us know in the comments if that's what you want. You want us to cover the PDA system and all of that. We sell branding points, and it's all going to fit together very nicely, I think.
Right. So. Exactly. And that's affiliate marketing has been around forever. I remember being 13 and reading into these little money books and stuff, and then being like, you got a 50% commission, but it's basically just selling online. But yeah, it's affiliate marketing, generally speaking.
So while you look at the comments there, we have a few that popped up while we were talking. CK says, when you're going to share your studio lighting, so we'll get to that at another one. Let's see.
I'm not sure. I'd have to try to figure out what the name of that is, because maybe we can. I'm sure I can go into what we bought, because it was just from Amazon as far as the lighting goes. Yeah. We bought 3 of them, and right now we're using 1.5. We have a very soft front light, and then like sort of bright counter light right here, and then we don't actually have the third light right now because for this we wanted to give more of a slightly warmer effect.
Romantic.
So we didn't want it to be like super bright and sterile and in your face.
Right. We can get into actually like a whole thing on how we did all of this if y'all are interested in that. So, and CK says, I'm not rebranding, but different image, same niche. So it's more like a visual pivot. Is that right, CK? And then she's talking about from scientific health and wellness to mainstream fresh and creative health and wellness. I'll serve the same people, but in a lighter way. Okay, so that you could consider that a rebrand, a pivot, because if you're keeping everything the same, it does make more sense to me to think about rebranding from a more visual perspective. So what your customers would see. To you, it's a pivot, right? It's just how large of a pivot would that be?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Let's see. She tells us to eat those sardines, 3 to 4 cans weekly for health.
No, I don't think I've ever had a sardine.
I don't know if I have either.
The only time I've ever been introduced to sardines is Ninja Turtles, because they have them in their pizza. And then pretty much any time somebody mentions sardines on TV, they always go, eh. So I've just never gone out of my way to try it. Yeah.
And then she says, psychedelic health coach. Where'd it go? Don't mind me, just brainstorming as I hear you speak. That's perfect. Brainstorm away. I love that. I'm very interested to know more about what that means, actually. And then CK says, I guess this is just, what's PDA?
If you hold on. If you missed it, the A in PDA was avatar.
Yeah.
And I know, again, this is what I was talking about in terms of like last week, we sort of bashed avatars. And thus, we'll talk about it more on Friday. Mm-hmm. It's not that the idea or concept of an avatar is absolutely wrong. In most things in life, there's no such thing as like absolutely wrong, right?
But people are taking it the wrong way and are using it improperly, and we see it causing a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and 0 results. Right, because they use it this way. Exactly.
So we'll get into more about that on Friday. So if you can't tune in, watch the replay. Otherwise, try to tune in live so you can also ask questions during that. But yeah, we'll just go into more about our concept of PDA.
Mm-hmm. And then just real quick before we sign off, are we going to address comments on Friday? Yeah. Okay. I want to say welcome to Lisa Tremblay. Am I saying that right? She says she's a new follower here. Welcome, Lisa. So glad to have you.
How are you?
Okay, so
let's go over just real quick some of the comments from yesterday's post. It shouldn't be anything super nuts, so let's hit that. So we have comment page 1. And really, this is something that pretty much everybody has agreed on. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think rebranding is necessary. It's scary and exhilarating, but necessary. I think it's necessary. Making the switch from in-person sales at shows to online-only sales is a big change and requires a whole new vision. Not a complete rebranding, but switching how the market, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so thank you, Deborah, Candace, Katie, and Carolyn for chiming in the public group. We get a lot of engagement in the public group and have consistent conversations. So if you're not in the DNC Marketing Facebook group, please join it. There should be a link pinned to the top of this page.
Right. And as far as like Carolyn is concerned, we were just talking about that, about the idea of pivoting and how it doesn't always have to be something completely different and new. It could just be slightly different.
Yeah.
Slightly new. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Just a little bit of a pivot. And I think really it's a mindset thing too.
Yeah.
Because even the smallest thing can be scary, like changing your logo, right? Some people, it does not feel small at all because maybe they've had the same logo for 20 years. But other people, whatever, they made it, they didn't like it, they want a new one.
Yeah.
So understanding that every change can be profitable and getting feedback consistently is going to be important.
Our logo that we have on the screen right now is the new logo. It's new squared logo. But if you give me that. If you look here on our cup is the circular logo.
Right.
And that was something that we had to, and then we have our actual message there. The discover your message, nurture your audience, and conquer your industry.
Don't spill my coffee.
My bad. My point to that is that we had to change that. And when I told Darian, like, hey, that circular logo, it looks pretty, it's nice, but it's not working for a lot of the ads that we're working with because everything is squared up. Mm-hmm. And so the circular is either getting cut off, it just doesn't look right in the corner.
It's stretched or squished.
Right. I'm like, we need something that's different. Something that's similar in terms of like that ink blot, so we keep that. It started the same idea, right, as far as like the rebrand. It's similar, but we need something a little different that's going to work better.
Right, square.
Right. So we went with something like that. We found somebody who does a similar design. And then we just said, basically, we want to keep this so our audience still recognizes it as ours, but we want it to be squared, and we wanted these colors and add a little gold and da-da-da, and boom.
Right.
And then it took a couple days, and sure enough, easy enough.
Mm-hmm. So. Exactly. And then we had some other comments from the page itself, from the post.
And that is right here.
So thank you, CK and Alicia, for chiming in.
Yep. And basically, CK says, I haven't rebranded. I've been happy with my niche. Lucky me, or not creative enough. that's not, obviously that's not the case. I'm sure you're very creative. It's you could be lucky. And one thing I want to make sure I say is always push yourself, right? So always make sure that as you're doing this, you are always trying to expand and grow. Thus the idea of the experimentation, as you mentioned, it's one big experiment, and that is true, right? You want to make sure that you are continuing to try and better yourself.
Right. And just like we talked about in previous episodes of Tackle Tuesday and on the Friday Q&A, testing is constantly important, is always important. So if you're happy in that niche, if you are profitable in that niche, it doesn't hurt to kind of poke around and test and see what other personality types you could serve, because like we explained before, you might be getting 50% of your potential revenue.
Right.
Whereas if you were marketing to 2 different personality types, then you're doubling your annual revenue with not that much extra work.
Right. It's just going to be a matter of changing the tonality and the overall messaging a hair. I mean, the difference between most of these is not night and day. The difference between like a lion and a golden retriever is usually night and day. That's why they normally don't work together as a person.
Right.
Usually those are the people that are like almost, and I use this term loosely because I know it's like an actual condition, but they seem bipolar, right? They seem like a person that's like, they're super happy one second and the very next second they're just like, what are you doing? Why would you do this? So normally people aren't in that range. And
we've said before, like part of this model was pulled from like healthcare management. Yeah. So it's a legitimate thing there that Julio is bringing up. It's also part of that personality system, because this actually works not just in sales, right? It has worked in college, in management, in healthcare. It's worked in a whole lot of different formats, and we've even seen it work in our relationship and in family management and in with coworkers. Like all this is learning how to communicate better in all realms.
Yeah, because initially it started off as a management technique, and then like I said, as a sales manager, I was taught this. I found it to be very useful, and then. Actually, before I was a sales manager, I was taught this, but that's mainly because with any job I've ever done, if I'm not, I want to be the boss, right? I remember when I first got hired on and I started off as a delivery driver for a company, I went up to, I think, one of the, not CEOs, of course, but one of the bigwigs, and I can't remember his title. But he was just visiting different stores and things like that, and I literally went up to him, and it sort of seems like a kind of a butthead move now, but I went up to him and I was just like, hey, my name's Julio, I'm one of your delivery drivers, I want to know how to get your job. Like, I legitimately said that. I was just like, in 5 years, I want to be where you are, how do I do that? And he was just like, okay. And from there, then I was able to kind of move up and continue on and do different things. But that was kind of the general idea.
And why did that work? Because you were a lion speaking to a lion. So I just want to point that out as like, it's very obvious to me, living with Julio, like, oh, okay, that's another lion move right there. And the only reason that worked well was because you were talking to another lion who was like, I got it, I respect that.
Right, as opposed to maybe somebody who would have took offense to it if it was a golden retriever. And the point to that story was that when I did that, I then grabbed all their reading material. Everything that they had when it came to salesmen, everything they had when it came to being an assistant manager, a store manager, a corporate manager, and I just grabbed everything. All videos, and I just was like studying it and reading it and studying it.
You brought it home.
Yeah, and that's how I was able to move up so quickly, A, and B, that's how I learned this, and I was just like, oh, that's really interesting. And then I started tweaking it into... When I eventually got promoted and hired onto the sales portion of it, I started tweaking it and being like, let me see if this actually works for sales as opposed to just management. And then once that started being successful, then again got promoted. Then then I'm training people. Then I got promoted again, and I'm training groups of people. I'm opening stores. I'm closing stores. I'm redoing inventory. I'm doing all sorts of different things. But the idea is that now my goal or my job is training, basically. And anytime there was a new sales rep, I was the one that started off the training because I felt it was so important that yes, my managers and stuff could have done that, but I wanted to be the one that goes up to them and says, hey, this is the core concept of what I teach. Other stores don't teach this. Other locations, other regions, other districts don't teach this. But this is why, even though our overall numbers, like in terms of like our annual revenue as a section of the country was 10 times lower than other sections, we were constantly producing some of the top 5 best individual salespeople. Mm-hmm. And that was because we were able to do this. And
then those bigger stores were just chomping at the bit to get a hold of those particular salespeople.
Right.
And if you're interested in learning more about how you can use all these things, like Julio is a world-class trainer, so you can book coaching calls with him too.
And then moving on, we have Alicia. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I think so. Let us know, Alicia.
So I have shifted from creating jewelry to cutting the gems that go in jewelry.
Yeah, you had a whole conversation with her about this. That was interesting.
But it was just the long and short of that was that, if I remember correctly, initially she wanted to create custom gems, and then she started creating custom jewelry, and now she's going back towards gems just in a slightly different way.
Right. So it's an interesting rebrand, actually, and I think a lot of people might experience this where you get into business to do a certain thing and it just kind of gets out of hand because you follow all the shiny objects, right? Mm-hmm. And then at some point you realize it's no longer recognizable what the point was that I was going for.
Right.
And so that can be where the rebrand happens as well, is coming back to, what makes you happy, coming back to the more simplified version. And actually, we've done that now as well.
Yeah.
We've gone back to a lot of the same methods we started at the early days of DNC copywriting because they were much simpler, and now we have a lot more resources to put toward those strategies. So,
exactly.
I mean, that is incredibly beneficial and incredibly courageous. Any kind of rebrand is. So I wanted to let everybody know who's considering that. Reach out to us if you're having trouble, and we can coach you through it. We can talk to you. Join us on these every time we put them on Tuesdays and Fridays and talk about it, because it can be stressful. It can be a bit of a heartache. You have to make some sacrifices and some hard decisions, but in the end, it's always worth it.
Yep. And then CK says, I also want to be the boss. Exactly.
That's why we do this.
So yeah, if that is it, we appreciate everybody's comments and questions. If you want to, feel free to continue the conversation, just DM us or continue to comment, and we will reply. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, look forward to the Friday live where we're going to talk about PDA. And also check out tomorrow's post where I go over the email marketing and just ads, ad reaction over the Peloton biking company.
Yeah, so. And Friday we want to talk about as much as we can, because especially with PDA, this can kind of change the conversation depending on how many questions y'all have.
Yeah.
But we want to go over top 10 things that you can do when rebranding and really dig into that. Our main purpose is to answer all your questions though, so make sure you show up, ask questions, and learn all you can.
Yeah.
And let us know what's going on with you and your brand.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Alrighty, everyone. Well, if that is it, I appreciate y'all's time, and we'll see you on the other side.
Alrighty. Bye-bye, guys. Stop recording.